as he joins us each and every week. Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com. Alec, Indiana, with a game that I felt confident they were going to be able to go in and win last night, especially with Iowa having not been playing well, on top of not having Connor McCaffrey, and then having the time off. They played like they were refreshed. They come out, they looked the part, they were moving, they were sharing the ball, they were scoring. They jump out to a gigantic lead, 22-4, I think, 27-8. We're early, which anytime you see gigantic leads like that at the start of games, it's either going to be one or two things. It's going to be a complete blowout, or that the other team is going to have enough time to get back into the game. Unfortunately for Indiana, they let Iowa not only back into this game, but to win it. Losing Race Thompson obviously hurt, but no excuse, because we're talking about an Iowa team that is also down.
Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty big gut punch for Indiana last night. We talked about it last week and in the week before. Just the start of Big Ten play here in January was extremely critical for Indiana. Regardless of kind of how they played, you needed to come out with a couple wins, and you put yourself in position to do that right out of the gate, right? You know, the slow starts were probably the biggest trend that came out of non-conference play for Indiana, and you kind of wiped that against the wall and came out ready to play. Everything they did in the first 8 minutes was incredible, right? That looked like a top 15 team playing on the road against a team that had lost 6 and 9, 3 in a row, really had no identity. A lot of things even outside of the program, right, with Patrick McCaffrey going on, and just a team that had looked a little bit lost. And Indiana did exactly what they needed to do coming off of a 13-day break. And, injuries aside, right, because you hear Mike Woodson talk about it. You heard Trace Jackson Davis talk about it. Everyone talks about it, right? That's part of the game. That's part of sports. Injuries are going to happen, regardless of if it's to your star player, your role player, whoever. You need to find a way to win that game. You're up 21 points on the road against a Big Ten team, though that does not come around more than once in a year. And with how many games will probably come down to 1 or 2 possessions for this Indiana team, how many games that have come down to 1 or 2 possessions to this Indiana team for the past couple of years, they've always been on the wrong side of that, and they've never been able to flip the script and be on the right side of that. They found a way to do that a little bit last year towards the end of the season, and they've just kind of resorted back to their old ways of not being able to fight through adversity, to fight through any sort of punch that's thrown. And again, I still am concerned about the in-game adjustments that Mike Woodson fails to make. Connor McCaffrey said it. I don't know if you guys heard it. I'm pretty sure other people have heard it. But after the game last night, basically said that when they went to zone, it looked like those players and that coaching staff had never seen zone before. So how does that happen? Because that offense was incredibly disappointing when they went to zone, and it was standstill. There was no movement. There was no cutting. There was no driving. There was nothing. It was pretty disappointing to say the least, to see that final 30 minutes of action unfold, and you're kind of right back to square one, if not below square one, with this Indiana program and this Indiana team at the current moment. With, again, so many questions now with how they move forward, who steps up, and not a lot of faith in potentially some of those reserves who I think a lot of people had a lot of faith in a few weeks ago.
To that point, Alec, and this is after Race Thompson went out of the game, so I think that obviously did make a difference. I'm not making excuses because I'm going to get to the point here, but Jordan Geronimo, a lot of times, other than just he made a lot of mental mistakes in that game, but at times on the floor, he looked very lost on the offensive end. I mean, there were a number of times it seemed like he was bumping into Trace Jackson Davis. And to me, that's very concerning because this is a kid who's been in the program for a couple years now. And you need to at least have an understanding to me. So there's either one of two things going on here. Either he's not fully grasped the offense or what he's supposed to be doing in certain situations, or there's a development problem from the coaching staff standpoint, because in those situations, we talked all offseason, this team has depth, they've got experience. This should be a team that, even if they have to deal with injuries, should be very competitive. And while he did at times do some good things, he made, to me, far too many mistakes. And I thought a lot of times he clogged up the lane and Indiana's offense looked dysfunctional. I don't want to put the full blame on him. Did you think that was a Jordan Geronimo issue at times last night, or did you think that was an Indiana offense, like you said, and like Connor McCaffrey said, not realizing or not knowing what to do against his own?
Well, I can tell you one thing, though. If he just hit one of his 3 missed free throws, that would have changed the game, because his stat line, other than that, was pretty good for the minutes that he played. He scored 9 points on 4 of 6 shooting. He hit his only 3-point attempt, but he missed all 3 free throw attempts in a 2-point loss.
Yeah, I mean, he also had a plus minus of -18.
Yeah.
Significantly worse than anyone else on the roster there. I don't always like to look into plus and minus because there's a lot of different variables that go into that. But I mean, that's playing for last night. I mean, the biggest asset that he brought to this team was versatility, especially on the defensive end, and that athleticism. And last night he showed absolutely nothing defensively, and was dominated by Chris Murray, possession after possession after possession. And right with no Malik Renew, that puts Indiana in a very significant hole. Because you're not getting anything from Malik, and now you don't know how long Race is going to be out, and now you look at that front court that was supposed to be one of the best in the country, one of the deepest in the country, especially the Big Ten, right? At least, and now you have one answer, and a guy who is playing on a bad back, who was obviously in pain in the second half yesterday. But to go back to your point about Jordan Geronimo, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's development.
He's not that good of a player. First of all, he's a great athlete, and I don't mean this to be negative, but he is what he is. This is a guy, again, who thought he was going to be playing NIA basketball until Archie Miller offered him a scholarship. So let's not forget this. He's a freak athlete, not a freak basketball player.
I understand that, but the thing I'm getting to Alec is you have to know the offense. If you're going to be on the floor, you have to know what you're supposed to do. And at times, he just looked lost. And that's why I'm asking, is that more of a coaching thing, or is that more of a Jordan Geronimo thing? Because that has nothing to do with your basketball ability to understand what you're supposed to be doing after a few years in the system.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone else is at least at some point figured it out, right? I mean,
right.
At some point, you just need to have the IQ, or either you don't. Right. And some people don't, and they get away with it because they have the great athletic ability. Not everyone's going to have top notch IQ, right? If they did in basketball, it would be a little easier to play. So it's very difficult because he shows flashes every single minute that he gets at some point, right? But he has those lapses on both ends of the floor that are just too much to overcome, and that's why he maxes out at 11, 12 minutes a game. And now, whether it be good or bad, right, you're gonna have to play through those lapses. And he brings his upside at this current moment, right? At this moment is way higher than Malik Renew, because Malik Renew has significantly dropped off and is not bringing any positive to the floor. Jordan Geronimo is still bringing
Indiana.
Yeah, and Jordan Geronimo is still bringing some positive moments. The negative moments are just way outweighing those positive moments. So, with 2 starters down, with 2 players who could at least score the ball at times, I don't know really where you go. It'd be great if you had one additional wing who you could kind of throw in there as a stretch 4, but you don't have that, and it's just one of those things where you're at the point in the season where you're either going to have to figure it out, or you're going to kind of go down with the ship, and I think that's what you're going to have to do with Jordan Geronimo. And this is going to be, I think his either defining moment one way or another for Indiana, right? Either he's going to live up to, some of those expectations and show those flashes and be consistent. And that's not scoring 20 a game. That's not scoring 15 a game, but you need some sort of production out of him, or he's going to resort back to a lot of those lapses, that we've seen. And I mean, just a significant one last night was the clear goaltending call that the refs ended up giving Indiana when Trace Jackson Davis had the little turnaround and Jordan Geronimo went up and tried to have the putback dunk, right? You just need to be way smarter than that. Obviously, it didn't hurt Indiana in the long run there because they still got the 2 points, but my gosh, there's just so many moments, like you said, Dustin, where it's just the lapses, and it's not physically, it's just mentally, which
right.
I don't think you can really help, at this stage in his career.
Malik Renew is one that is now of great concern because he has not shown development. It's like he has hit a wall, and that wall is at the same place. He hasn't passed that. He comes in, he's too slow. He gets fouls. He just piles up the fouls way too quickly. And once you do that, well, you can't help from the bench. And now with the injury to Race Thompson, which I'm not going to speculate on it, but obviously it did not look good. I was judging by the tears coming down his face because I don't think that had anything to do with pain. I think it had to do with nothing but him knowing that him playing basketball again is in question for Indiana, at least, because we don't know what happened with it. And, but with it being this time of year, I don't know, but it does not look good. You can just hope the best for him. He has been a warrior for that program, but golly, without him, this team is going to be in trouble because Malik Renew has not shown to be a reliable backup that I expected him to be, especially with the promise he showed early on. And having continued to get to work with Race and Trace every day, I'm not sure why that development is not there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's development, right? Because he's shown that he can be that player. I think it is,
I mean, he's not gotten improved. He's not improved for the last.
Well, yeah, but
month
again,
6 weeks.
You look at the freshmen who are supposed to come in from day one and make a significant impact, and that number is very small compared to how many freshmen come into college basketball every single year. You got one of those guys with Jalen Hood-Schifino, right? So Malik Renew has shown those flashes, but I think it's just more of that freshman wall that 99% of freshmen hit right around this time, right? You get into big time non-conference games, much better than the cupcake games that Indiana had on their schedule. Then you get into Big Ten play where everything is just way more physical. You're going up against, again, guys who have been there for 4 or 5, now even potentially 6 years, right? That's a huge difference. Even if it's not development, just overall frame, toughness, and mental capacity, right? I mean, he's going through finals, first time going through college finals, a lot of games on the road, not a lot of time just to relax, going through obviously the holidays coming back after that. This is where you see the wall as a freshman. Again, same thing with Jordan Geronimo. You're now going to have to just ride with them and see if they can break through any of this inconsistent play, because Indiana needs one of them desperately to step up. And, I know people are going to probably talk about, well, why don't we see Logan Duncan? We probably will a little bit, but you're not going to be the team that you can be if you're going to have to rely on Logan Duncan, who again now has been in the program a few years and hasn't shown anything, mainly because he hasn't been able to stay healthy. You need to go with the guys who have the higher upside right now, in my opinion, right? And see in these next few games if you can get anything out of them to build on going into the the real deep part of Big Ten play.